All right, get ready because we are going deep into eternity flowers.
Eternity flowers.
Yeah, so basically real flowers, but they last for like months or even years.
Yeah,
It's kind of wild.
it is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think for me, like a bouquet that never wilts, like sign me up.
Right.
Like that sounds pretty appealing. So we're going to get into like all the science behind it,
Okay.
all the creative stuff people are doing with these, and even like the business side of it all. So
Cool.
who knows? Maybe you listening, maybe you'll find like a new passion or even a business.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really interesting area.
Yeah, for sure.
And it is interesting that you mentioned, like, the magic of it.
Right.
Because the science is actually really cool.
Yeah.
It's not like fake flowers or anything. We're talking real flowers that have been preserved to just, like, keep their beauty.
So how do they do that? Like, how does that even work?
Well, the sources mention 3 main ways to get this to happen.
Yeah.
Glycerin soaking, freeze drying, and silica gel.
Okay, so I've heard of freeze drying like for food. Yeah.
But for flowers? That's new to me.
Yeah, it's pretty versatile.
Okay.
Like, it's not just taking the moisture out. It's
Right.
about taking out the moisture in a way that keeps the flower looking good
Right.
and vibrant. So imagine this. The flower gets frozen, then put into this vacuum chamber,
Uh-huh.
and the pressure gets lowered in there, and that lets the frozen water in the flower sublimate,
Sublimate.
which basically means it goes straight from ice to vapor, like it skips being a liquid.
Wow.
And that's super important because that keeps the flower's structure intact and stops it from like shrinking or getting messed up.
So it's like pausing nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Like hitting the pause button.
Yeah, it's like a snapshot in time.
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point. It's not one size fits all.
Right. Right.
Like you were saying, how do they know which method to use for which flower?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all about finding the perfect match.
Okay.
Kind of like picking the right coffee. Like, what are you in the mood for?
So glycerin, that's usually the go-to for flowers with thicker petals and stems, like roses and hydrangeas.
Okay.
And it works by swapping the water in the plant with glycerin,
Okay.
which is a natural humectant.
Smectant. Okay.
Basically, it attracts moisture. So think about like
Okay.
soaking a sponge in glycerin. It gets all plump, right?
Yeah.
So same with flowers.
Yeah.
The glycerin keeps them like shapely.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then what about silica gel, like those little packets you find in shoes and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Those.
Yeah, what do those do for flowers?
So silica gel is like the king of absorbing moisture.
Okay.
And that makes it perfect for those really delicate flowers with all the little details because it dries them out super fast.
Interesting.
So they don't have time to wilt or get damaged while they're being preserved.
So like those super fragile orchids.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like lilies.
Yep.
Okay.
It's like capturing them at their peak.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Each method like plays to the strengths of the flower. It's like a dance between science and nature.
Yeah, I like that.
But then it gets even more interesting
Okay.
because we've preserved the flower. Now what?
Yeah, good point.
So this is where the creativity comes in and also the business side.
Right, because the source mentioned all these really cool things that people are doing with them.
Yeah.
They're making these decorative boxes with the preserved flowers in them,
Uh-huh.
bouquets that, last forever,
Yeah.
even jewelry boxes with them on it,
Right.
which talk about a unique gift.
Oh, totally. It's like taking these flowers and turning them into something people really want, like art.
Yeah.
They're not just gifts, they're experiences.
Okay.
Like a way to hold on to a moment, a feeling for years.
Yeah, I totally see the appeal of that,
Yeah.
especially in today's world. Everything's so fast-paced
Right.
and everything's so disposable.
Yeah.
So to have something that lasts, a reminder of an occasion or a memory.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like frozen in time.
Yeah, but I imagine that this isn't just appealing to the average person.
No, definitely not.
It's I feel like there's a business opportunity here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it from a business perspective.
Okay.
So traditional florists, they always have to deal with flowers wilting, right?
Right.
Always restocking.
Constantly.
But with eternity flowers, you have a product that doesn't die.
Right.
Longer shelf life, less waste.
Makes sense.
And that can mean, more profit,
Yeah, that's a good point.
less waste, less hassle,
Yeah.
and a product that people really remember.
And, speaking of successful businesses, the source talked about this company called Sweetie Gifts.
Oh, yeah. They're doing some cool things.
Yeah, and they've really made a name for themselves with these eternity flowers.
Yeah. They're a great example of passion meeting, good business sense.
Right.
They're global, U.S. and Europe.
Wow.
And they've got some big clients like Armani Beauty, Pandora. Yeah, so it's not just a small thing. Eternity flowers are like going mainstream.
Wow, so they're clearly doing something right.
Yeah, it's not just pretty flowers, though.
What do you mean?
They're all about quality,
Okay.
like where they get their flowers, how they make the arrangements, and like taking care of their customers.
So it's the whole package.
Exactly, and that's important, whether you're buying or selling.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, quality builds trust,
Yeah, for sure.
and that's what makes a business successful in the long run.
So it's not just about the product, it's
Right.
about the experience.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the values behind the brand.
Yep, and Sweetie Gifts, they've got that down.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Quality, artistry, and lasting beauty.
I like that.
Yeah, it all comes together.
Which brings up an interesting question.
Okay, what's that?
How does this concept of lasting beauty, of preserving a moment,
Yeah.
how does that hit us, emotionally?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, because we've talked about the science.
Yeah.
We've talked about the business.
Yeah.
What about the feelings behind it all?
I love it. Let's get into that.
Yeah.
Because flowers have always been about emotion, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Love, sympathy, celebration.
Yeah.
But what happens when you add that forever element?
Right.
How does that change things?
It feels like it makes it more, I don't know, meaningful or something. Like
Yeah.
if someone gives you eternity roses, it's not just a gesture. It's
Yeah.
like they really want to cherish that moment,
Exactly. It's deeper, like holding on to something precious,
Yeah.
defying time, especially in a world where everything feels temporary.
Yeah. And
Like a symbol of hope, a reminder that beauty can last.
And I imagine that's especially powerful for events like weddings or anniversaries.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine having your wedding bouquet preserved
Oh, wow.
forever as like a symbol of your love,
Yeah.
a reminder of that special day.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, it becomes a family heirloom.
Wow. A story that gets passed down.
Exactly. And that's what makes eternity flowers more than just decorations.
Yeah.
They're like vessels of emotion.
Yeah.
They tell a story.
Yeah, I like that.
They capture moments and keep them alive in a way that regular flowers just can't.
It's powerful stuff.
It really is.
But I'm curious, beyond the personal meaning,
Yeah.
is there like a cultural significance to this whole preserving flowers thing?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Different cultures have different views on death and remembrance,
Yeah.
the passage of time.
Right.
And in some cultures, preserving flowers is a way to honor the deceased, to keep their memory alive.
Oh, interesting.
And in others, it's about keeping a special occasion alive, passing it down.
Right.
And eternity flowers fit into this in really interesting ways.
It's like they bridge the gap between the beauty of nature and us wanting things to last forever.
Exactly, that human desire for permanence.
Right.
It's a fascinating mix of nature, culture, and emotion.
But before we get too caught up in the warm and fuzzies, we got to talk about the elephant in the room.
Uh-oh, what's that?
The downsides.
Oh.
The things the source didn't really talk about.
Right, I see what you mean.
The environmental impact.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because it does seem like a valid concern.
Absolutely.
If we're messing with a flower's natural life cycle,
Yeah, we have to look at the whole picture.
Right, so let's untangle that, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've covered like the science and the artistry and how these flowers can be like a business.
Yeah,
We even touched on like the cultural side and the emotional side.
definitely.
But now it's time for like the less pretty part.
The downsides.
Yeah, the environmental impact.
Okay, yeah,
It's like when you see a beautiful tapestry and then you flip it over
right.
and it's all messy on the back.
All those knots.
Yeah, exactly. So let's untangle those knots, right?
Let's do it.
Like, how do we even start to figure out the environmental impact of these flowers?
Well, I think a good place to start is like following the journey of the flower from the beginning to the end.
Okay, so like, where do they come from?
Yeah, where are they grown? What resources are used?
Yeah, because we don't always think about that stuff.
No, not really.
Like how much energy and water and land it takes to grow anything.
Right.
And with flowers, there's a whole system behind them.
Exactly, a whole agricultural system.
And the source didn't really get into that.
No, it didn't.
But we can at least ask the questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, are these flowers grown in monocultures?
Right, which can be bad for the soil.
And they need a lot of pesticides.
Yeah, exactly.
So are they using more sustainable practices?
Right, like crop rotation or organic methods.
Yeah, that's a big factor in how they impact the environment.
It all ends up.
And then there's the whole transportation thing, right?
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Flowers travel a long way sometimes.
They do, across continents even.
And that means carbon emissions.
Right, and also the risk of invasive species.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Whole complicated network.
Yeah.
So to really understand the impact, We got to look at the whole journey.
From farm to processing to, our homes.
Exactly. Every step of the way.
Okay, so let's say the flowers have made it to where they're going to be preserved.
Okay.
Are there environmental impacts with those processes too?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like with the glycerin, the freeze drying, the silica gel,
Right. All of those have potential downsides.
even though they have their benefits, right?
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
Okay, so let's break it down, starting with glycerin.
Okay.
It seems pretty simple, but is there anything to be concerned about?
Well, glycerin itself is pretty harmless.
Okay,
It's natural, usually from vegetable oils.
okay.
But we got to think about how they're getting that glycerin.
Right, is it sustainable?
Exactly, and ethical.
Okay, what about freeze drying?
Yeah.
That sounds like it takes a lot of energy.
It does. It's a high-tech process.
Right,
Special equipment, lots of electricity.
to make that vacuum and keep things cold?
Yeah, for the sublimation.
So where's that energy coming from?
Right, that's the big question.
Is it renewable energy?
That would be ideal,
Or are they using fossil fuels?
which is, bad for the environment.
Yeah, because of the greenhouse gases.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are the two big ones. What about silica gel?
Oh, yeah, silica gel, those little packets.
It seems harmless.
It is, pretty much.
Just absorbs moisture, right?
Yep, that's its job.
But what happens to it after?
Right, good question.
It's used to dry the flowers, and then what?
Do they recycle it?
Or does it end up in a landfill?
That's what we need to know.
Because that could be bad.
Yeah, potentially leaching chemicals?
Right, so it seems like every step has its challenges.
Does, it's complicated.
And we haven't even talked about the packaging.
Oh, yeah, the packaging.
All those fancy boxes and domes.
Right, got to make them look good.
But what are they made of?
Yeah, are they sustainable materials?
Can you recycle them?
Or are they biodegradable?
That all adds to the impact.
That's like peeling back the layers.
Yeah, but instead of tears, it's environmental concerns.
Exactly, it's a whole web of things to consider.
And I think it's important to remember
Yeah.
we're not trying to say eternity flowers are bad
No, not at all.
or that people shouldn't enjoy them.
It's about being informed
Right, giving you the information you need,
so you can make good choices.
choices that align with your values.
Exactly, and we'll talk more about that in the next part.
Yeah, because how do we navigate all this?
It's a lot to take in.
How do we balance the beauty with the potential impact?
Good question.
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so we've been through a lot.
We have.
The science, the business, the emotions, even the not-so-good stuff with the environment.
Yeah, it's been a journey.
And now it's like, we got to figure out what it all means.
Right, like what did we learn?
Exactly, and what does it mean for you listening,
Yeah, that's the important part.
So just to recap quickly, we found out that there could be some pretty big environmental impacts.
Yeah, potentially.
From how the flowers are grown to how they're preserved, even the packaging.
It's a lot to think about.
So does that mean we should just forget about eternity flowers altogether?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's not an easy one to answer.
Right, because they are beautiful.
They are.
And they do last a long time.
But we have to weigh that against the costs.
Right, the environmental costs.
And ultimately, it comes down to your values.
So how do we even know what to do?
How do we make good choices as consumers?
Yeah, where do we start?
Well, I think asking questions is a good start.
Okay, like what kind of questions?
When you're thinking about buying eternity flowers,
Yeah.
ask about the company. Where do they get their flowers?
Okay.
How are they grown? Are they transparent about their practices?
Do they care about sustainability?
Yeah, do they care about fair labor?
Okay, so that's about the growing part. What about the preservation?
Right, that's important too.
Can we even tell which methods are better for the environment?
It's not always easy to know for sure, but look for clues.
Okay.
Do they mention renewable energy?
Okay.
Do they recycle their materials?
Their packaging, too.
Yeah, all of that.
It shows they're thinking about the impact.
It's a good sign.
And speaking of packaging,
Yeah.
I think we can make a difference there.
Oh, definitely.
Like choosing companies that use less packaging.
Less packaging.
Yeah, or sustainable packaging or stuff you can reuse.
Right. We can choose with our wallets.
Yeah, exactly. And don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah, let companies know what you want.
Tell them you care about the environment.
The more people demand it, the more they'll listen.
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect.
Exactly, pushing the whole industry to do better.
But it's not just about the companies.
Right.
It's about us, too.
It's about how much we consume.
Do we need all these flowers?
That's a good question.
Or can we find beauty in things that don't last as long?
Things that are more natural.
Yeah, maybe simpler.
It's worth thinking about.
Well, why are we buying these flowers?
Right, is it because we really love them?
Or is it just because it's trendy?
Are we being influenced by marketing?
Good point. And, it makes you think,
Yeah.
how do eternity flowers compare to regular flowers?
Environmentally speaking.
Yeah, because eternity flowers last longer,
So maybe we buy fewer flowers overall.
which could be a good thing.
Less waste.
But then again, there are all those issues with how they're made.
The production, the preservation.
And regular flowers, they might be more local,
Supporting local farms.
less transportation.
It's a tough call.
There's no easy answer.
I think that's what we've learned from all this.
There's no one right way.
It's about understanding the complexities
Thinking about all the angles.
and making choices that feel right for you.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into eternity flowers,
Yeah.
we want you to remember this. Knowledge is power.
Knowing what you know now,
About the science, the business, the emotions, the environment,
you can make better choices.
choices that reflect your values.
Exactly. And this is just the beginning.
Keep asking questions.
Keep learning.
I keep
The
exploring.
world is full of fascinating things.
And sometimes things that seem simple
Like flowers.
are actually really complex.
That's the beauty of a deep dive.
It's just the start.
Of a much bigger journey.
So until next time,
Keep diving deep.
keep those minds curious
And keep blooming.
wherever you're planted.